Have you ever had an identity crisis? Like one day you woke up and you were like, who am I? What am I doing? Jak asks himself that question every day. Jak and Daxter was the brainchild of the studio Naughty Dog, who at the time were running high off the success of Crash Bandicoot.
Crash Bandicoot.
Despite the success, the studio had an unhealthy relationship with Universal Studios, the owners of the Crash IP. Because of this, Naughty Dog decided to leave Crash and make something completely different.
In 1999, during the development of Crash Team Racing, two programmers began work on a secret game under the codename Project Y. But why was it called Y? And why were people spreading rumors of it being a Yoda game?
At the time, progress was as slow as my pet tortoise Sammy. However, once CTR was finalized and out the door, it was full steam ahead on Project Y!
Naughty Dog had developed 4 games for the Sony PlayStation and had exhausted all of the potential out of the hardware. I mean, is there a better looking game than Crash Bandicoot 3 in the system? I don't think so.
As a result, the team were keen to produce an entirely new series for the entirely new PlayStation 2. But who would star in this brand new series? Jeff Goldblum? Nope.
Taking inspiration from the likes of Star Wars, Disney, and Studio Ghibli, the team settled on a story about a little farm boy chasing his dreams. The team were keen for the main protagonist to be appealing to a worldwide audience.
As a result, the character was a combination of Western and Eastern influences, which included anime, manga, and hentai. Naughty Dog were also keen to keep the protagonist a mute in order for the players to stay connected to the character.
Naughty Dog founder Jason Rubin felt that if players controlled a character that told bad jokes, they would often distance themselves from that character. He cited Gex as a perfect example of this, thinking that because he wasn't funny, people didn't want to play the game despite the accomplished gameplay.
Jak would not be alone on his quest, with Naughty Dog being keen on giving him a sidekick.
This sidekick would be a Giga.
Gigas from Earthbound.
But they realized they couldn't.
But then they realized they couldn't have Gigas for copyright reasons.
This sidekick would be Daxter, a little Ottsel who was inspired by Mushu from Mulan. Eddie Murphy's wisecracking performance made them want to include a little animal sidekick who would tell them dirty jokes and not give a shit.
Hey there, baby! How would you like to get in bed with your sexy munchkin?
During development, the team considered introducing a third main character who would develop throughout the game in a Tamagotchi style. However, this was abandoned as Naughty Dog wanted to concentrate their efforts on the 2 leads. On top of that, Andy Gavin disliked the number 3.
With the characters fully formed, Naughty Dog continued development of the game, which lasted 3 years. In 2001, Jak and Daxter: The Precursor Legacy was released on the PlayStation 2. Now, if you told us this was the first Jak and Daxter game produced, you would be
wrong! For you see, in the run-up to the game's release, Naughty Dog actually created a little flash game to promote Jak and Daxter. This game was originally available on the internet. However, last year, a group of dedicated fans recreated it in all its 2D glory. The game itself isn't actually that exciting, with the player just walking around, collecting items, and talking to villagers.
Sort of like me in my everyday life.
However, it is cool that this lost game has been restored. In fact, there's a whole community dedicated to restoring lost Flash games, like Pitchfork's Adventure to No Man's Land, and our personal favorite,
the
Falcon.
The Precursor Legacy is all about Jak trying to help his friend Daxter become human again, to be human again. You see, Daxter, being a complete idiot, accidentally falls into Dark Eco and becomes an Ottsel.
Well, actually, he gets knocked into the Dark Eco.
Yes. Well, he shouldn't have been standing there. Anyway, he's an Ottsel, which means he's half otter, half weasel, all wisecracks, a bit like Steve Buscemi.
Along for the ride are Samos the Sage and TechWiz Kira, who give our heroes plenty of necessary exposition.
Exposition. Jak and Daxter is an open-world platform game in the vein of collectathon classics like Super Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie, where players run around to collect power cells, precursor orbs, and tasty scout flies. Yummy. However, unlike those games, Jak and Daxter featured a massive interconnected world. A world so huge, you'll need Brian Blessed to point you in the right direction.
That way, is it? No. No? Oh. That way?
No,
No?
no, that way, right at the top of the mountain.
The game's world was a technical marvel, with players being able to visit each location without experiencing any loading times. A feature that many games today are still struggling to achieve.
The world of Jak and Daxter was truly a joy to behold, filled with jungles and sunken cities, snowy mountains, and a whole load of lava. I mean, these locations would work amazing in a David Attenborough-style documentary.
A snake's eyes aren't very good.
The game was also littered with a load of quirky supporting characters, including the Fisherman, who was voiced by Batman himself, Kevin Conroy. Bet you didn't know that, did ya? Well, if you looked at the credits, you would know.
Gameplay-wise, Jak had the classic assortment of moves for a platforming hero. He could double jump, he could punch and spin attack, he could even use his own noggin to smash open crates.
Oh man, that must have hurt.
Yes. On top of that, Jak could also pilot a hovercraft or ride a flut to get through tough platforming
I thought it was a
challenges.
flute.
Either way, it's a giant bird. I remember we used to do our own sing-alongs when we were riding the hovercraft.
Yeah, I
It'd be
remember
like,
that, yeah. Like,
we're all going on a summer holiday. Ah!
The game went on to receive critical acclaim, with many praising its graphics, gameplay variety, and light-hearted story. It would also go on to sell over 2 million copies.
Believe it or not, but when Naughty Dog started developing the game, they didn't actually have a publisher. They were just funding it with their Crash Bandicoot money, a currency that was only out for a limited time in the US. People who had it were very rich, as each note was worth $100.
Really? I have thousands.
Yeah, you got
Oh
them
my
stored under the
gosh.
kitchen sink.
Yeah, and also, you can't use it anymore.
No!
Now it's as worthless as Monopoly money.
I used to spend Monopoly money.
Thankfully, the studio had an established relationship with Sony, resulting in them acquiring Naughty Dog in the final year of the game's development. This made them a first-party studio.
With Sony's support and healthy sales, Naughty Dog got to work on a sequel. A sequel that had such a tonal shift, it would completely throw you off guard. Like that bit in Help I'm a Fish, when the three kids think they're safe and then suddenly, they're chased by a friggin' wave!
Jak II Renegade was released in 2003 and was a considerable change of tone for the series. I mean, just look at this cover. It's rated T for teen and Jak is holding a gun. The story involves Jak, Daxter, Samus, and Kira accidentally transporting themselves into Haven City, a dystopian city ruled by the tyrannical Baron Praxis. Jak is captured, subject to dark eco-experiments, and suddenly talks?
I'm gonna kill Praxis.
So much for your silent protagonist theory, Jason.
Anyway, Daxter frees him and the duo join the Underground, a group of resistance fighters who are fighting back against the establishment. Along the way, the group meets several new faces like the Angry Torn, the Angry Ashlyn, the Angry Crew, and the Angry Pekka. I mean, everyone in this game is so grumpy, which is the complete opposite of the sort of lighthearted, joyful tone of the previous game. So what gives, Naughty Dog? Why did you change the tone?
Well, it turns out GTA 3 was to blame for the dramatic tonal shift. The critical and commercial success of GTA 3 changed the perceptions of the video game industry, with colorful platformers now being considered exclusively for babies. Naughty Dog conducted a focus group during Jak 2's development and found out gamers as young as 8 preferred to play mature games like GTA. This trend was also seen with the Prince of Persia 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog.
Well, duh, hence why you said video game industry. It means the whole industry as a whole.
And so began the death of childhood innocence.
You know what killed my childhood innocence?
What?
The end of Help Him a Fish.
What happens to a fish if he drinks too much antidote?
It becomes human.
Can a human breathe underwater?
Of course not.
Naughty Dog questioned whether they should continue the Jak and Daxter series, however Sony persuaded them by insulting them, like the Ooze in Ghostbusters.
You worthless piece of slime! You ignorant, disgusting blob! You're nothing but an unstable short-chain molecule!
You foul, obnoxious moth!
Eventually, they found a compromise, and so the team decided to make the game more mature. And
Like
when you say
Cheddar
mature, we're talking swearing and guns. Because you don't get more mature than that.
And a lot of sex.
And a lot of boobs.
As a result, the world of Jak was now a gritty dystopia, with hover cars, city blocks, slums, and sewers colorized in murky brown and grays. The story was also far more complex, with less defined heroes and villains. In fact, Jak himself changed from happy-go-lucky farm boy to brooding anti-hero.
The complex story was a product of the game's new mission-based structure. While the previous entry was a collectathon, Jak II is more akin to GTA, where you would meet characters and they'll give you tasks to complete. One such task is to fire a Nerf gun pellet into your friend's mouth. That's not to say Jak II was devoid of platforming. Jak II remembered its platforming roots by offering plenty of missions which involved jumping over bottomless pits. However, Naughty Dog were also keen to spice things up by throwing in some necessary
ingredients. Take the twinkle of a light and lights over codfish. Ask an octopus for a dash of ink.
Well, no, Jak II didn't feature all the fishy stuff, but it did include hoverboarding, mech suits, vehicle missions, and races. Last but not least, there were all the guns, which allowed Jak to shoot metalheads in the Baron's guards, all in the name of justice.
We also can't forget to mention Dark Jak. A, dark version of Jak, which allows him to beat up dozens of enemies with ease. Dark Jak could also level up his powers thanks to the Oracle, who gave you disturbing information of what's to come in real life.
I sense there'll be a great virus that will weaken humanity and cause economic ruin.
You gotta see what else he says. Listen to this one.
New York City will be overrun by beavers in the year 2034.
The game was another technical achievement, once again featuring no loading times. On top of that, the character models were more detailed, as you can tell from this comparison of Daxter from the first game to the second.
Despite the shift in tone, Jak II was another critical success, with critics giving it all the praise, like when the fish glorified Joe for giving them the potion.
Can you stop bringing up Help I'm a Fish?
I can't help it, okay? It's lodged in my brain. I can't get it out.
Critics were impressed with Jak II's perfect blend of platforming and shoot-'em-up action, while others enjoyed the game's ambition and twisting story. However, some critics found the game to be too difficult due to the sparse checkpoint system. Like its predecessor, the game sold over 2 million copies. That's it.
Retrospectively, Naughty Dog have debated the quality of the game, with some of the team feeling the series lost the charm of the previous entry, while others enjoyed the breadth of gameplay on offer. One thing they all agreed on, though, was that the game was friggin' hard.
Or maybe they just weren't good at playing it.
Oh.
After the release of Jak II, Jak and Daxter actually appeared as playable characters in Everybody's Golf 4. The game was actually released in Japan in 2003, but Jak and Daxter didn't actually appear until the North American release in 2004. There was also Ratchet & Clank.
Nice shot! A year later, a sequel, simply titled Jak III, was released. Believe it or not, though, this title caused a lot of arguments in the office, because Andy Gavin was not a fan of the number 3. I mean, there's a reason why it's called Crash Bandicoot Warped, and not Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. Andy wanted to call it Jak the Wastelander, but after several weeks of arguments and fights behind closed doors, the team won and they called it Jak 3.
Taking place 1 year after the events of Jak II, the game begins with Jak and Daxter being banished to the Wastelands for crimes against Haven City. Basically, he's left for dead.
He's a game?
However, thankfully, he's rescued by Damus, the king of a settlement outside the wasteland. I mean, we say rescue, but the first thing Jak has to do in this barbaric land is to prove himself a warrior and kill a bunch of people.
Later on, Jak is called back into Haven City to help defend it from the metalheads. This time, led by Errol.
You remember Errol? Errol's this guy.
I win, Jak.
And now he's back to basically destroy the world.
To be honest, the plot is a bit messy and can get quite confusing. I mean, like, I know this guy's Vega, but who is he actually in the game, and who's this guy?
However, the cutscenes are always a joy to watch, and the plot does have some pretty neat twists. Like this one, for example.
There's just one thing left to say. I am your father.
What?
I'm your father!
Right, yeah.
Listen to your feelings.
You're not my
No,
father.
seriously.
Jak III continued the mission structure and gameplay options of the previous installment, with the game focusing heavily on platforming, driving, and gun combat. This time around, Jak can also drive a buggy through the desert, which was heavily inspired by the Rockstar game Smuggler's Run. Apparently Jason Rubin was playing that and was like, I want to do that. And he did, many years later.
The weapons were also expanded upon, with many new upgrades that allowed you to decimate everything on screen. On top of that, you could play as Daxter. I mean, he was actually playable in Jak II, but only in limited sections. His role in Jak III was greatly expanded on.
Jak III received positive reviews, with critics praising its variety of gameplay and dense story. Many also praised the exceptional production values, while others appreciated the easier difficulty compared to its previous installment. The game sold just under 2 million copies, making it the least successful entry in the trilogy. However, rumor has it that the sales were impacted by Andy Gavin, who did it as payback for them using the number 3.
The buggy gameplay of Jak III would ultimately build the groundwork for Naughty Dog's next entry in the Jak series.
And when we say buggy gameplay, we mean the driving, not that the game was buggy.
Oh yeah, exactly, yes, of course. That's right, with a bit of combat, action, and racing, these were the perfect ingredients to make a fantastic racer. But then Naughty Dog added an extra ingredient.
Chemical X.
And thus, Jak X Combat Racing was born! Released in 2005, and saw Jak and his pals taking part in the Combat Racing Championship.
Sega Rally Championship. Jak and friends are invited to the reading of Crew's will, the big guy who died in Jak II.
Oh, thanks for that. I haven't finished the game yet.
It's been out since 2003.
Doesn't matter. There are some people, like myself, and possibly other people, like one of our viewers, I don't know, maybe Frogger,
Well, how
who
can I
hasn't played
explain
it.
the plot of the game without acknowledging the fact that he dies in the second game? Anyway, Krill...
Krill? Who's
I'm thinking
Krill?
about helping a fish. Crew states that he always wanted to win the Combat Racing Championship. To coerce Jak and the others to take part, Crew gets them to drink a toast laced with poison.
Poison?
If they win, they'll get the antidote, and if they lose, well, they're gonna die.
Jak X featured a surprisingly rich story for a racing game, with the cutscenes being a major highlight of the game.
The relationship between TV personality GT Blitz and Pekka always makes me give out a good, hearty laugh. Like that fat man at the start of King Kong.
The gameplay consisted of combat racers and battles.
During races, players can pick up red, yellow, or blue eco. Red is for defensive weapons, yellow for offensive weapons, and blue for turbo boost. I always think it's funny seeing Jak shoot his friends while racing. Surely they'll be dead in all that explosive carnage.
Oh, carnage can be very explosive in the Spider-Man series.
I'm not Stop trying to bring Spider-Man into this.
What are you talking about?
Like the last one, you brought up Venom, remember? Venom isn't even a proper world in this game.
Of course not, he's a villain from Spider-Man.
No, it's a planet in Starfire. You do it again and you're not going to be in the next video.
Oh.
Jak X also featured online multiplayer, which allowed up to 8 players to face off against each other. They had a wide variety of modes to choose from, including Artifact Race, Capture, Deathmatch, and Sport Hunt, among many others.
The game was released to mostly positive reviews, with critics praising the graphics, story, variety of modes, and the inclusion of online multiplayer. However, many agreed that the game got very repetitive when played for long periods of time. Then why not just play it in small doses?
The game sold well enough to be included in Sony's Greatest Hits line, which was not a musical album, it was their Platinum range. Jak X proved to be the last installment developed by Naughty Dog, as the team went on to produce the Uncharted series for the PlayStation 3. On top of that, this was the last game from Jason Rubin and Andy Gavin, as the Naughty Dog founders decided to call it quits and leave the industry for good.
Rubin did return to gaming though in 2012 as the president of THQ. Meanwhile, Andy Gavin has gone into writing novels, and he only goes up to, 2 books.
I mean, they don't really need to work anymore, as they are living off that Crash Bandicoot money. They're like Scrooge McDuck, swimming in his money bin. Despite Naughty Dog no longer being involved, the series did continue with the release of Daxter in 2006 for Sony's first portable of the PSP. This game was developed by new studio Ready at Dawn, a team consisting of ex-Naughty Dog employees.
As you expect from the title, the game lets you play as Daxter, with the plot focusing on his adventures during the time when Jak was imprisoned by Baron Praxis. It turns out that during this time, Daxter was hired by an old man named Osmo, that's it, to become a bug exterminator, killing bug-like metalheads. The game's story was nice and strange, but it fit in so well, sort of like Rayman singing Sex Bomb.
Sex bomb, you're a sex bomb, and you can give it to me when I need to come along. Sex bomb, you're my sex bomb, and baby you can turn me on.
Daxter's role as an exterminator led to the introduction of some neat tools. This included an electronic bug swatter for melee attacks, as well as a spray gun which can be used to stun enemies or hover over gaps. Like previous entries, Daxter also featured vehicle gameplay, with the player being able to ride various Zoomers.
On top of that, the game had bonus dream sequences parodying popular movies, like The Matrix and The Lord of the Rings. Remember the Smith fight in The Matrix Reloaded? Well, Daxter does.
Upon release, the game received positive reviews. While most critics found the game kind of formulaic, they did enjoy the gameplay on offer. However, some found the story to be absolutely ridiculous and kind of boring. Now, remember when I said Jak X was the last Jak game developed by Naughty Dog? Well, it turns out that wasn't entirely true. After the release of Jak X, Naughty Dog split into 2 teams. One team was working on Uncharted Drake's Fortune, while the other was working on a Jak game for the PSP.
The team toiled away on the new game for several months, however Naughty Dog eventually had to abandon it, as they couldn't juggle 2 projects at the same time. You know what they say about juggling? At some point, something always goes wrong.
Bam!
While the PSP team moved over to Uncharted, the game was salvaged by High Impact Games, a studio which consisted of ex-Naughty Dog and ex-Insomniac Games employees. They had previously released Ratchet & Clank Size Matters.
And size does matter, of course.
In 2009, Jak and Daxter The Lost Frontier was released for the PSP and PS2. This time around, Jak and friends headed to the skies to find out why the world's eco-supply was running low. Along the way, they encounter sky pirates and the citizens of Aerobar. Aerobar. Makes me hungry for chocolate.
Have you ever tasted the bubbles?
Gameplay-wise, Lost Frontier carried on the mixture of platforming, gun combat, and driving. This time the vehicle of choice was airships, which players could customize and use to navigate the world. Players could also control Daxter in a dark form, which meant running around and beating up a load of bad guys.
Oh, that was completely stupid, personally. What were they thinking? Dark Daxter? It had no purpose to the plot.
Yeah.
Either way, the game received, strangely, mostly positive reviews upon release, with most enjoying the platforming sections, puzzles, and the customization options for Jak's airship. However, some found the camera to be problematic, the environments to be bland, and the Dark Daxter sections to be incredibly dull, like Aaron Taylor Johnson in Godzilla.
The biggest criticism came from Naughty Dog themselves, who said that while they like high-impact games, they thought the game underdelivered. Specifically, they said they were not happy with the game being Jak's swan song, and that they would have done a much better job. I mean, talk about blowing your own trumpet.
Naughty Dog didn't actually give up on the Jak IP, with the team exploring the opportunity to develop a new game following the release of Uncharted 2. The team were interested in producing a more realistic, contemporary version of Jak, as seen in these weird, strange character designs.
However, the team ran into a dilemma. If they veered too far from what the fans knew and loved, would they be disappointed by the game? However, if Naughty Dog stuck to the series' roots and not pursued the direction they wanted, were they going to be happy with the game they made?
Dear oh dear. It'll all end in tears.
With a heavy heart, Naughty Dog decided to cancel production and move on to The Last of Us instead. But did you know that The Last of Us actually contains many influences from the Jak reboot? specifically in the similarities between Daxter and Ellie.
You didn't know that, did you?
So what's the similarities?
Read the article.
I have to read?
After this, Jak and Daxter will continue to appear in other crossover PlayStation games. For example, they appeared in PlayStation Move Heroes in 2011, starring alongside Ratchet & Clank and Sly and Bentley. This game was designed to use the PlayStation's Move controller, so you could swing your cane in real time with Sly.
While it had potential, the game ended up being a complete disappointment. This was mainly down to the game's spotty motion controls and repetitive gameplay. Which is a shame because, you know, they got the original voice actors and everything.
And also, what's up with these crossovers being party-based? Crash and Spyro in the GBA, Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games.
Yeah, like, just give us a straight-up adventure game, you know?
I mean, if they say, oh, we don't want them fighting each other, but you did it with, you know, Smash Bros. With Sonic and Mario. And also, coming up next is PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale.
Speaking of that, they did appear in the fighting game PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale.
That's what I said.
Yes, which was a semi-Smash Bros. Clone, but with Sony characters.
The game was okay, but it felt kind of cheap, with average graphics and a lack of content.
Finally, there was a Jak and Daxter collection released in 2012. This collection was developed by Mass Media Games for the PS3 and featured HD remasters of the first 3 Jak games. The collection was also ported to the PlayStation Vita a year later.
I remember the Vita.
Yes, and in 2017, the first 4 Jak games, this included Jak X now, were released on PlayStation 4, referred to as the Jak and Daxter Bundle. The Bundle of Joy.
With that, the series has effectively come to an end. Naughty Dog appears to have no interest in producing a new game, and honestly, it's hard to figure out where Jak fits in the current gaming landscape, leaving the fate of the franchise as mysterious as the center of the Earth.
And what do you think's at the center of the Earth, Bad Bob?
Sorry?
What do you think's at the center of the Earth?
Dog food.
Personally, the Jak series has always struggled with its identity, lacking the focus and clarity of the other PS2 platformers like Ratchet and Sly.
Yeah, despite this, Jak series is still a lot of fun to play, especially the first game, which I believe is your favorite.
The first game is my favorite, though I still like the sequels.
Oh yes, I do. Yes, I do like the story of the sequels, and to be honest, they are really good games.
Will the series ever return? We shall have to wait and see. In the meantime, Jak and Daxter will continue to dance into the fire.